Before we even begin with this podcast, what I'd like to do is just to kind of have us do a little invocation for grounding. And so I'll offer what we have really co-developed, Jess and I. And then Jyothi, if you have anything that you would like to offer as an invocation, as a blessing, then I'll hand it over to you. Does that work for you?
Sure.
Okay. So let's start by just grounding ourselves and being in that space of arriving. And as we arrive here, finding both feet firmly planted on the floor and feeling the spine upright and feeling the flow of breath, prana, life force moving through us. And we thank you for this blessed day. We are so grateful to be alive and to be seeking the truth that reveals itself in the eyes of these beholders today, coming together to express love and service and compassion in action. We feel everyone has something special to share in this world, and we are grateful for Manoj and Jyothi being with us here today to share their story and the sparks that inspired their actions in creating ripple effects, actualizing love in this world. Let us all be inspired by their story and light. And let's have this light be a lantern for causes that matter deeply to us and to our world. Today, we will value progress over perfection and know that we are guided and protected on this journey of service and love with our human family. For the sake of our precious short lives, may we be leaders who care. May we be leaders who act mindfully for the greater good of generations to come. And may we listen intently without the need to fill space with sound and seek to understand rather than postulate how to interject. Dear masters and teachers, guides and guardians, please guide us to learn the lessons of living from our hearts and allowing the ripple effect of goodness, inspiration, hope, and courage to flow from our words into the positive actions, supporting our families, communities, and this beautiful world we've been gifted to occupy. We hear your call to express beauty in this world, and we thank you. Namaste. So Jyothi, I'll hand it over to you if there's an invocation, a song, a mantra that you would like to begin with.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhave. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya.
Thank you. So for all of our listeners, I am going to just do a short introduction of the two of our amazing guests here today, Manoj and Jyothi Chalam. And then I'll hand it over to you to begin with a little bit of your story. So Manoj is known for many as the Murti Wala, somebody who schleps and sells murtis, who are statues.
Schlepping is a Sanskrit word, right?
Schlepping is a Sanskrit word, that's right. statues of Hindu and Buddhist deities, and he teaches their symbolism, archetypes, philosophy, mythology, and he's known as a storyteller who combines science and popular culture, psychotherapy, and whatever it is he can get his hands on. He's a scientist by training, a PhD in chemical engineering from Cornell, and he also tries to keep his teachings real with a healthy dose of humor. Jyothi Chalam is a scholar of Advaita Vedanta, non-dual philosophy, and an accomplished South Indian classical music singer, as we just witnessed. Jyothi is a master teacher when it comes to sadhana and Vedanta philosophy. Jyothi is my philosophy teacher, and I'm so grateful for that relationship. Jyothi's guru is Swami TV from Asha Vidya Gurukulam in Pennsylvania. And Jyothi spends many months every year at this ashram studying the Vedantic scriptures in the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutras. We are so honored to have the two of you here today in our Real Eyes, Real Eyes podcast, and just really wanted to say thank you. So before we get going, Jess is going to kick us off to questions, but I'd just like to ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being awful, 10 being awesome, how are you feeling in this moment? And what are the contributors to that feeling?
I'll answer the question first. I'm feeling quite better, quite well right now, because the weekend wasn't that good for me. I was running a high fever, and along with that, whatever comes, that was going on. But that's why we needed to talk to the doctor just before the call.
Yeah.
That's when they called back. We left a message early in the morning. And so I guess everybody's busy, and there are so many people that they're taking care of. So finally, they called us. So I'm feeling really good right now because the temperature has become normal again since this morning. And along with that, a lot of the body ache and everything is also reduced. So I feel great.
And if Jyothi is happy, I'm super happy. I may not express it, but we may as well disclose that Jyothi was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer literally around April 1st with a 50% chance of living in 1 year. And, she's amazingly strong. Here's where the philosophy and practices, she's able to disconnect her mind from the body pain. But it's harder on me because, it's not harder, but it's harder for me to handle it because I feel almost like powerless.
Yeah, that's the reason. Yeah.
I feel, so one night we were up all night with the pain, way back in April. So things have stabilized. If she feels better, I feel amazing. For a while, though, we did use the hospital as a second home.
Yeah. Well, you two are such a unit. And you've had your own health issues this year too, Manoj, with your heart.
Yeah, I had open heart surgery in June.
Yeah.
But mine was a planned event. I've been having this issue. I was kind of managing, perhaps even faking it with all my travels. I would literally travel and meet 20,000-30,000 people a year.
Yeah.
And I became good at sort of, living with it. But finally this year, we never went to the doctors for 15 years, Jyothi and I. And this year, while dancing in between karmic raindrops, we're making up for all the years we didn't go. So, but as I said earlier before we started, Buddha calls this world samsara as despair, but the philosophy is really cheerful despair. So the world kind of, to a large extent sucks, especially now, the pandemic and different issues for people. But whenever we see something, an ability to look at the positive, then the good bonhomie, the cheer bubbles up. That's why the philosophy is cheerful despair.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I love that you say that a happy wife is a happy life, to kind of paraphrase that piece and how you're feeling. So, Justin, we're going to go ahead and go to you to kick this off with some questions because we would love to hear about Jyothi and Manoj's journey. So thank you.
Hey, we're also super grateful. We're literally the first guests on your podcast. Yes. May Ganesh bless all of us and your forthcoming guests to make this a huge success and create massive ripples to the point of tsunami. Jai Ganesh.
Oh, Jai Ganesh. I love that. By the way, we've got Ganesh and Lakshmi and Hanuman in our company here because I think
I see that.
Very much blessed, a blessed journey. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, we're so excited to have you both. And, you know, you both touched a little bit on how you move through what's currently happening, you know, what's going on and the different perspectives and all of that. And so I'd love to kind of, you know, kind of hop in a time warp and head back to both of your childhoods and hear a little bit from each of you about what you were drawn to and what maybe shaped early perspectives and interests early on that built a foundation for kind of how you've moved into working through things now.
Okay.
Big question.
What's the beginning? Yes.
And go.
Start.
Yeah. So I grew up in a very traditional Hindu family, and my parents are very spiritual, and so I watched them doing prayers every morning in the puja room where all the deities were kept.
In South India.
In South India. So every morning they would do that one after the other. You know, they didn't do it together because my mom had to send us off to school, so she would be working in the kitchen, and so my father got to go there first, and he had to go to work, and then my mother would come in and she would do her part, and so I was staying home. I remember as a child before going to school, sitting with my mom, and she would recite some of the mantras like I did now. She would recite it, and I would learn it at a very young age.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah. So my mother is my first teacher, actually, for everything, for music, for all the mythological stories. Oh my God, the number of stories she told me. Innumerable stories,
So the great mythological epic, one of them is Ramayana, from where Hanuman comes. I'm wearing a Hanuman t-shirt,
Wonderful.
But then, Valmiki is the original author. But where did you hear your first Ramayana? Usually your mom.
Yeah, my mother used to read it to us. So this is my sister and brother also like. See, my brother is 9 years older to me. My sister is 7 years older to me, and I'm the youngest in the family. So when my mom read it to me, but they also would come and join us. And she likes to do different sounds for different characters, so she would change her voice. It was the most fun thing,
That's fun.
Yeah, I wish she would do that for the great grandchildren now. Yeah. She has 3 great grandkids now, but she doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's her voice, the voice.
Yeah. So she's alive. Is she still in South India?
No, she lives in Chicago now.
Chicago, okay, with your sister. Oh.
Yeah, my sister and my brother are both there. Both their families are there.
Yes.
So my sister has 2 sons, and they have 3 children between them. So her older son has 1 daughter, and her younger son has 2 daughters. So these are the great grandchildren of my mother and father. Both of them are alive, actually.
Well, before we hear from Manoj, I know the 2 of you also have a daughter, Janita. Yes. And so would you also do the kind of motherly task of letting her know stories?
I did not read her the Ramayana, but I would tell her the story. I've told her lots of stories. And I also taught her a lot of mantras when she was a child. And she would recite every one of them before going to bed every night. Aww. She probably still remembers them. She probably doesn't chant them anymore,
Yeah.
So, but then I'm sure she remembers them because she chanted them for so many years.
I love that.
One of the huge influences Jyoti had was teaching Janita classical, South Indian classical music. Janita has been learning since the age of 4, just like Jyoti has been singing.
Yeah.
And now she came out with the first album, the single, but it's like, rhythm and blues, jazz.
Oh, she's
So she
amazing.
easily gets into Western music
Yeah.
with this strong background. So that's a massive influence. She even our daughter sang at Bhakti Fest, a song on Krishna.
Wow.
It's great.
Yeah, so I would say, coming from the family,
It's the fourth.
music.
She's the fourth generation of musicians. My mother's mother was also a singer.
Ah, gorgeous.
But
And
the kind of music is very spiritual. It's very bhakti.
It's all spiritual.
Well, I think one of my favorite times is seeing Manoj, you and Jyoti, and Janita really singing together. You and Janita. I mean, it's just a beautiful family tribute when you do that because you can just feel the love. It's precious. How about you, Manoj, with your background?
Well, it's a total opposite. And we are very different personalities. It's fascinating. And we've been married, 34 years. 34 years. Right? Yeah.
Wow.
I've been in America 36 years. So, yeah, I grew up in a big city, Mumbai. My parents were mildly spiritual. They would visit an occasional temple. I would just go along. So I was more like a good cultural Jewish folks I meet. I was a cultural Hindu more. I was minimally exposed to the deities. And even when I was exposed, I was really not interested.
Huh.
I didn't feel any connection. And I was, more or less I would classify growing up was agnostic. Which here's a bad joke from Stephen Colbert. It's not me. It's an atheist without balls. That's what he said. Yeah. You like that, Jessica? So
No comment.
no comment. Okay. I hope I should have checked with you. Is explicit okay for this podcast?
We're not an explicit podcast, but we can blip that stuff out. No worries. You be you.
Sometimes people can't understand my accent. I think that's why they keep coming to my retreats because they have to listen to the jokes again. And then I became a good engineer. I went to a top school in engineering in India, IIT. It's like MIT. And then I came here for grad school. Still was, agnostic. But life has a way of throwing you, sucker punches, despite your well-laid plans to all of us, right?
Yes.
So I was in the corporate world. I was not happy, after my PhD in chemical engineering from Cornell. And I kept changing jobs. I even changed my name to Mike, but that's my legal name when I became a citizen, just to see if I could fit in. And I could never fit in because I have a brown nose already. I couldn't suck up all the time. And I tried different entrepreneurial activities. They all failed spectacularly. So in psychology, there's something called learned helplessness, right? You keep getting whacked. And then you lose that sense of agency that you're in charge. And I needed that because I wasn't, it was the absence of spirituality. It was the underlying reason for my, not feeling okay. But I didn't know that. And then, in the Joseph Campbell hero's journey, one of the essential things that happen is meeting the goddess. So it's not only meeting the goddess, following the goddess. So I met Jyoti 34 years ago, but I started to follow her literally 20 years ago when she started this Murti business, the statues behind you, Christina, the Shiva, Ganesh, Hanuman, Lakshmi. So even though I had like 3 separate companies earlier, high tech, one was a CEO, and they all failed, I followed her. And this was an occasion of consistency over intensity. Before I was very intense and I would crash and burn. This is the only area in my life professionally where I was consistent for like almost 20 years. So here we are, you know.
Incredible.
So yeah, I turned spiritual through the business. I would say that.
That's great. Now, Manoj, you have a great joke that you say, the difference between PhD and MD. Would you share that with us? I love it.
Yeah, PhD is like, you know, as you know, piling higher and deeper, right? We get to know more and more about little and little, but it's, you know, the pile is pretty high. An MD is a money doctor, and a PhD is also a poor and hungry doctor.
So you've got your PhD in chemical engineering from Cornell, right?
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a fun. I'm more of, you know, I tend to experience things, and it was great life as a grad student. Even Jyothi and I went to Spain, you know, when I did research in the University of Seville. So it was, the experience was fantastic, very international.
So when you find that, so you followed Jyothi in terms of you've met this goddess, you were like, boy, oh boy, just to be in her light, what an honor. Tell us a little bit more about the spike in your relationship, your partnership. Like, what did that look like? And how did you know that your path to start really moving into storytelling and Vedic philosophy was something that the two of you were carved out to do in this world?
Well, I'll give you my perspective, and I'm sure Jyothi has her perspective. So first of all, this is probably not a shocker, but our relationship was an arranged marriage. It was more an arranged date. So we met in Pittsburgh. She was in Chicago. I was in Ithaca, New York. We met there. And there's something in the eyes I saw, you know, because we literally went out to eat like that evening, and something in the eyes that I said, okay, this is it. You know, I'm more that kind of a person. I've always been that intuitive, kind of go for it, you know. You come to a fork in the road, take it, and then you do whatever it takes to make it work, right? So there's no good or right, good or bad decision. It's what you do after that.
Yeah.
And the spike was, you know, in my case, it was really the business of the statues and meeting my customers and seeing Jyoti's practices, deeply spiritual, that moved me slowly. So in the beginning, it was very intellectual. You know, archetypes. I should teach at Deepak Chopra's retreats. The archetypical energies, the symbols, uh, they're compelling. The hero's journey.
Yeah.
But in my case, there was no bhakti. There was no devotion. It was more academic, intellectual. You know, you see them. You know, this thing is fascinating. The philosophy, the symbology. But again, I come back to the goddess. You know, Durga. This is Durga's time, Navratri. And Durga came into my life in several ways. I was in Cincinnati at a yoga teacher training, and 8 years ago, and there was a fire in the hotel. But 10 minutes before the fire, she came and woke me up, and I evacuated the hotel before it happened. So she comes and protects you. The same Durga as Parvati came into my life 15 years ago when I was drawn into this little village in South India in my travels and got my scroll. You know, the scroll is like a palm leaf where my whole life was revealed, including
These are
the
the
fact
Nadi
that
scrolls, right?
the Nadi scrolls.
The
Yeah,
Akashic records. Yeah.
that's right. Where it said, I will meet Jyothi, I will get married at this time. It talked about my mom's name, dad's name. It said, I will import art from India. I live overseas. It said, Ganesh is my archetype, you know, which is true. You know, I find connection with Ganesh. We have a belly, we share a belly. And then it said everything what my life is going through. It was quite remarkable. So when you see a document in front of you, which tells you your whole history, it is not an intellectual argument that can change you. It's an experience. Even now in this environment, This with all the tribalism, you can argue all you want. Nobody's going to change their mind. It's an experience, when you lose your health insurance, lose your job, stuff like that, that can change you. So in my case, that was the seminal experience. You talked about a spike, major spike. Then it talked about the future, how we will teach together, which we are. It gave me the exact day I'm going to die. So meeting death is a big deal. So everything was revealed. And then we started to teach together literally roughly about 15 years ago. And I would again say I followed Jyothi because she's the one who encouraged me. And she's been teaching us. I would say she's the main sort of almost like a feminine guru of the ashram we have created.
Yeah, I would say not even almost, but most certainly. Jyothi, I'd love to hear your perspective on, and also just how would you think about the ripple effect that you actually have in this world on people through the teachings that you do? How would you describe that?
Oh, that's a really difficult question because when the teaching is done, it is done without expecting anything in return. So I've never really made an effort to find out if it's working for people or how it is affecting. I've never done that. That's why it is a difficult question. But if there are certain indications, then there are certain indicators which say that maybe people are benefiting from it. It is if I announce a Zoom class, then a bunch of people show up and to give me their time and their attention. That is saying something, right? So from that I can probably get a clue that it is
and also the retreats, right? The 5-day retreats.
Yes. Yeah, that's another indicator.
We would get about 50 people, many from not only out of town but outside the country.
Yeah. For the listeners that don't know you as well, can you describe a little bit more about the work that you do and the piece about Vedic philosophy teaching that is near and dear to your heart?
So my main focus is on studying the scriptures. So as I study it, when I get an opportunity, I share it. I share the teachings. But it works the best when I don't announce a certain topic, because the moment I put a topic and I announce a topic, then my focus is on that particular topic, and then I have to now prepare for that particular topic and all of that. So it kind of changes the way things happen,
Yeah.
And but then when I just speak, then whatever is meant to come out just comes out, So last few times I've not announced a specific topic. I keep it general, and that just worked better. And so basically what needs to be said will be said. That's it. I don't take any credit for or blame for anything that goes on when I'm on the Zoom call. So that's the way I see it.
Such a sweet soul of service. Beautiful.
The philosophy, if I may, do you want to, for people who are not familiar, what is the philosophy?
Philosophy is a non-dual philosophy. It's you can also call it Eastern philosophy, and it is seen through the eyes of Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya was a philosopher, and he wrote commentaries for 10 of the Upanishads. Just the 10 out of, I don't know how many there were at that time. There may have been a few more. Today there are more than 108 Upanishads. There's even an Upanishad called Allopanishad. In that, Lord Allah is the main deity. And so people add on, it's not from the original scriptures, but people add on to it because the teachings are can come from any part, right? Anywhere. So, and also when they attach themselves to Upanishads, they'll get a better name, right? To be attached to it. So if you look at the different encomiums or stotras, a lot of them would say by Shankaracharya. And there's no way the original Shankaracharya in his short life of 35 years could have written all of that. There's no way. It's not possible. It's not humanly possible. Because the work that he's done itself is quite a bit, quite a lot. And then on top of that, to write all of this is just impossible. But they attach that name there so that they'll get the recognition. That's one reason. The other reason is there at any given time, there are at least 6 Shankaracharyas in India. Like right now, there are Shankaracharyas, and most of them are great scholars. They know Sanskrit very well, and they've also studied the scriptures very well. They can easily come up with a new mantra, and of course, they're going to sign it as Shankaracharya. Right? Because they're the Shankaracharya.
It's recognizable. Yeah.
So then you don't know if it is the original Shankaracharya or not. But if you're a scholar of Sanskrit, like my teacher is, he can look at the mantras and he can look at the meanings and he can say if this is the original Shankaracharya's work or not. He can easily say. Because the original Shankaracharya, it would talk pure philosophy as the scriptures intended it to be. So what does that mean? If you think about it, if you go to school and enroll yourself in a course, the students who score the most are the ones who got what the teacher meant to say. Because they're all listening to the same words. They're all listening to the same words of the same teacher, but they all interpret it differently. But the ones who got what the teacher meant to communicate are the ones scoring A's in their classes, right? So there's a central theme in the scriptures. Similarly, there's a central theme in the scriptures. And whoever conveys that message clearly, that's what Shankaracharya did. All he did was look at the Shruti and he said, this is a central theme. It is in and through all the Upanishads. This is the same message. And he picked that up and he conveyed it beautifully. And so we understand it. We can understand. If we study Shankaracharya Bhashyams, we will have no doubts. Everything would be crystal clear. There would be no doubts. But if somebody else were to just translate the words, you look at that, there'll be seeming contradictions. There'll be contradictions everywhere. You'll never be able to resolve all the contradictions. It's impossible. So that's why Shankaracharya's work is very special. There are very few people who can study it because you need a scholarship in Sanskrit for studying it. And lucky for us, we have a teacher who's a scholar and he's able to decipher it and teach it in English. I mean, what more can we ask for? Right?
That is a blessing. Yes. When you find the depth of knowledge that you have and are continuing to study and learn the scriptures and just this life practice, and I just wanted to key in on something that Manoj had said. There's something in the eyes. You mentioned that with Jyothi, and I think that what I'm hearing you also say, Jyothi, is there's something in the eyes, but there's also a knowing that happens in the heart when that you see the central theme, if you will, of the scriptures and how that plays out in life. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's playing out for you now? You have some challenges going on, as Manoj mentioned, with cancer, and what has that been like for you as a journey, and how have you been relying upon the scriptures to support you?
What happens is when you dedicate your life for the study of the scriptures and you study it deep enough and long enough, what happens is an internal transformation. There's an internal transformation. You completely change. You're not the same person anymore. You're not a person at all anymore. Actually, it's not, I shouldn't even say same person. You're not a person anymore. That person is the ego, right? It's centered on that ego. That ego starts to slowly vanish and it's gone. The ego goes away. And that happens. Usually you don't notice it first. The people around you start noticing it first. And then you notice it when a crisis like this happens, like, the cancer. So that's when I noticed it, that's when I really, really noticed. I mean, there were other occasions where I could catch a glimpse of, there's been some change in the interior. But this one was pretty amazing because I went to the urgent care just for a simple, I was having some heartburn issues. I did not have any symptoms of the cancer. Although stage 4, I had no symptoms whatsoever. I don't know if I had the symptoms, I didn't notice them, or, because I learned to deal with them, or I did not have it at all. I never felt the need to go to a doctor. Then finally, I started experiencing these heartburn, which was just kind of very painful. And yet I dealt with it for 10 days. Then I said, maybe I should see a doctor, So I told Manoj, and Manoj said, okay, I'll take you to the urgent care. We'll give you some medicine and send you. Right? That's what he was thinking. And he was already planning to get some lunch because he hadn't cooked anything. I hadn't cooked anything that morning. So because we were going to the urgent care. So he was texting me about what would you like for lunch? Can I pick up something? And so we were planning on that. But what happened is they ran some tests, and then they whisked me off to the hospital right away. And
an internal ambulance.
Yeah, they put me in an ambulance and they whisked me off. And Manoj didn't get to see me because of the situation with the corona going on. He couldn't see me other than through a FaceTime maybe, but so, and then he was devastated by that. He couldn't see me for 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when then they're looking at all of this, they found a lot of tumors, a lot of organs were affected by it. And so they were giving me all this news, and they're saying this could be malignant. They hadn't done the biopsy yet. But there are resident doctors, they're being trained. They come in there, and they one of them gave me the clues. This could be, because he's explaining all of this, and there's no reaction whatsoever on this face.
Yes.
So he said this could be malignant. So he thought maybe if he used that word, I'll have some reaction, right? There's no reaction. So they couldn't believe it, and I couldn't believe it myself, because they couldn't have said anything that would have disturbed this mind. So that I would think is the biggest benefit that has come through being a student of Vedanta for these many years and studying intensely for these many years. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know what I was looking for, but initially my search was for meeting God. I wanted to meet God and have a conversation. I hadn't thought of what I would say when I meet God, but I wanted to meet God really badly, and I thought it was possible. It was possible to meet, because in some of the songs that I sing, the composer would have described gods and goddesses as if he had been in their company, So I would imagine, oh my God, how nice it would have been to be in their company. That's why he was able to compose all these beautiful, songs, because one of them composed 1,000 songs in his lifetime, So it's not humanly possible, if you think about it, to be able to compose that many songs. That too, he would just sit in front of his favorite deity and everything just poured out. And to try to learn one of those songs is very difficult for us. We take many weeks sometimes,
Yes,
days or weeks to study a song.
It's got to be pre-Hulu, pre-Netflix, because everyone's a little tied up. Yeah, it's like, get outside. Yeah. I remember, Jyothi, that was something that you mentioned when we first connected, that you'd listen to the music and you would have these experiences and listen to the words that they were saying. And that inspired you to then want to connect to God in those ways through music. So that's really beautiful. What are some of the ways, because I can feel the spark, I can feel what guides you and carries you, and I know it's probably difficult to put to words, but on the days that you wake up and you just kind of feel human, right? We all probably have those days where we're just like, I don't really feel like doing it today. What is that spark that keeps you going with these practices, with this work of service? Can you put that into words for us, or share with us a little bit about that?
The only way that I can answer it is if there's a doer, there's a doership in you, that I am the doer, that kind of a feeling. When that is there is when you get tired of doing something. If there's no doership, if there's no doer in you, then there's no work that's being done. And the work that you're doing is not difficult. And therefore you never get tired of it. You do it as, as part of something that, is done every day, right? It's your duty, so you just do it.
I love that.
So
Yeah,
even
it
now
keeps going.
through, I mean, she has some days of pain. Uh, she still studies 4.5 hours. It's like a college level. That includes half hour of meditation. Before the cancer, it was literally 10 hours a day.
Mm.
So it's like a fish swims in water and doesn't realize what water is.
Mm.
That's what self-knowledge to Jyothi is, the study of scriptures. And it's not just intellect, it's practicing the teachings. And you talked about eyes, Christina. I love being next to Jyothi when she teaches satsangs, when she allows me on Zoom, because I look at her eyes, Her eyes have almost like it's not the regular eyes, or even the spark I saw when I first met her in Pittsburgh. These eyes are like, I see the same eyes on Swami TV or other Mahatmas. It's really an awakened person. And then when it comes to the practical application, the pain, she's able to decouple the mind from the pain. So the body feels it, but she doesn't. But I feel the pain. And I feel learned helplessness, right? I talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's some huge benefits of the teachings, of non-dual philosophy, the storytelling, as we see it.
Yeah.
And for people who want to know, the cancer it's been what they call partial remission. So the chemo is working. It's really shrunk it down. An ability to deal with the chemo on a regular basis is also a big deal, because it's literally poison being put in to remove the poison.
Mm-hmm.
So most of us have had experience with family members who've had cancer. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
So here's the benefits of the practice, as you put it, Christina.
Well, and as Jyoti said, with going in with stage 4, that it had, you hadn't realized that for such a long period of time that, you
Yes,
started.
that's at least 2 years, they said.
Yeah.
And when the doctor saw the first CT scan, and he'd seen the tumors had reduced more than 50%, and he called it miraculous. He'd never seen anything like that before.
Of course, that's
And
so
even
amazing.
the doctors felt her energy, and they're all like in the secular world, and they'd come out and hang around her. One even would come on his off days. So there's a peacefulness, the doctors, nurses, they all felt that.
Yeah, there's one nurse called Cheryl. What she does is she goes and finds out who her patients are. And if I'm not paired with her, she would switch with the other person.
Of course, you've got some favorite wonderful angel caregivers, don't you? Oh.
No, we truly appreciate. We understand now the devotion of the healthcare workers. That's spirituality in action.
That's
beautiful.
Earth angels right there.
Earth angels, humanists. Many of them are beautiful humanists.
So Manoj, before we kind of tie this up, I'm curious, you're such an amazing storyteller. And I'm wondering if, as we talk about real eyes and being able to see awakening behind the eyes and into the soul, there's so much challenge and struggle if you look at it that way in our world today. What would you say as advice, as something to help inspire all of us as we're on our journey? What comes to mind for you?
I think for today's times, it's a very relevant issue, especially as yogis, spiritual practitioners, because it's very tribalistic environment. The thing is, there's also a lot of spiritual bypassing going on. When you say, "Oh, everyone is one," that's BS. Okay, we are not. We are different. So America is not a melting pot. It's more a salad bowl. We are all different. Some of us are broccoli. That's okay. Yeah. What to do?
What to do?
Is, when you go deep down, what Carl Jung called individuation, right? So we have the persona, the mask we put onto the world, we have the shadow side, and these stories are to address all these, So we all have a shadow we don't want to face sometimes, or we don't want other people to know. And then we have the ego, right? Jyothi talked about the ego, the sense of doership. And then you have these archetypes from different traditions, but we specialize in Hindu and Buddhist, uh, and they cover up the self. The archetypes are like organs around the self. So the journey of individuation is going from many to the one. There's only one self. So that's really where the melting pot is. So the way I would try to use this in a practical situation is a couple of ways. One is, anyone we meet, if they and have an interaction, be it at the grocery store or the doctor's office, if you are able to shift them a little bit, something interesting you say, uh, maybe a little joke, because the humor puts people in the state of witnessing, right? It's called metacognition, going beyond. Meta is beyond. So that little burst of humor, takes you away from the day-to-day issues. And I think there's a book called 10% Happiness by Dan Millman. So if they walk away feeling a little better, you've done your job. Because the world in Sanskrit is called Jagat, but it's a world each of us engages, encounters. So each of us encounters a different world. So we don't need to be like massive activists. If you are, all power to you. We don't have to go to Zimbabwe and build a bridge. If you build bridges wherever you are in the world around you, so that's one way you can practically use the teachings. The second way is, so this one way is to help other people. Second way is to help yourself when things always don't work out. And you can't like meditate when somebody cuts you off, shows you a finger, or your boss or your colleague tells you unkind words, or your spouse says something mean. But you can tell yourself a simple phrase instead of meditating or unplugging. If you can tell yourself, isn't this interesting? If you just use that phrase, it takes you back, again, metacognition, into the role of a witness. And I can narrate a story, a little incident that happened to me. I was teaching in Vermont at a yoga studio in the Green Mountains in Manchester, a little town. And next to the studio is a fancy colonial hotel, and in the fall it's very expensive. Hotel Equinox, I remember, $500 a night. So during the break, I'm wearing my hippie clothes, my t-shirt. I walk around and saying, "Why is it so expensive?" Like very colonial style. And a extremely expensive car pulls up, a well-dressed guy in a suit, and he looks at me and says, "Jose, carry my bags." And I did. I carried his bags because rather than getting triggered, I told, it's become instinctive. I said, "Isn't this interesting?"
Yes.
So I carried his bags and he gave me $100 tip. So here's an example where cultural misappropriation, I was mistaken for a Mexican dude, helped me as a good old-fashioned capitalist. Yeah. So I'm saying we don't need to get like all triggered, and there has to be more of a sense of humor. That kind of keeps it more of an even keel.
You're so wonderful at that. You're so wonderful at reminding us of that. And what it sounds to me like is when you are in humor, and the both of you together in humor and in love, it doesn't feel like it's work. It's just authentic and it's genuine. So as we look at kind of on the horizon, just kind of as we'll move towards an end, because I know that we've got some time where you've got your teacher coming up soon in terms of some more teachings. I'm curious what we have to look forward to. What are the two of you up to in terms of where people can find you, what they can get involved with? What's on the horizon?
So do you want to go or you want me to? So we've been doing the workshops and retreats a lot, right? At our temple. We have a temple in San Diego. You've been there, Christina. I would love to see you, Jessica. Besides Ganesh, your archetype is also Saraswati. I feel that, Christina. Because Saraswati in today's times, she's the goddess of Vak, speech. V-A-K. Vak is like the word vocal comes from Vak.
Yeah.
And when things flow out of you, the speech, the organizational of the thoughts. I heard you organize a meeting last time. It just struck me. It is your archetypes are Ganesh and Saraswati, big time. So we would do these workshops and retreats at a temple. I would travel a lot to yoga studios, teach teacher trainings, teach at festivals. But then the pandemic, literally April and May, I was like a deer in the headlights, just dealing with Jyothi stuff. But then the Zoom calls started to happen. I've taught at online conferences, so you're welcome to attend a Zoom. Christina can perhaps put a link. There's
We'll
a
put
lot of
some links
YouTube
into the
videos
speaker
out
notes.
there. So both
Sounds
Jyothi
good.
and I, we teach by Zoom and also teacher trainings. But interestingly, and you know this, Christina, I just felt a need to connect in person.
Yeah.
And it's not just me, everyone, the heart connection. Like, there's something about meeting in person where I can watch the total nuances of the body language, free smells, everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we opened a workshop in person in a Lakshmi garden because we moved our temple and warehouse to a Theosophy Lodge location. And last Saturday was the Goddess Workshop, Awakening the Goddess Workshop. And I try to keep it at 10 people, but like an Indian bus, people keep coming, and I couldn't say no. So we ended up having like 22 people and people loved it. It was like trees and foliage. And,
Gorgeous.
so we will do another one for Diwali, which is really like Samhain, the Celtic festival, New Beginnings.
Yes.
And I think from January, we will do longer events. So that's our goal. And you're welcome to come. We hardly charge anything. It's you. It's community. That's
and we'll keep those links relative to with this podcast link. We'll put the links to the website so people will be able to find you.
Absolutely.
So I first of all want to say thank you so much to the two of you and for just being here. It's just been an honor and a pleasure to hear from the two of you more about your story and just the spark that you have. And there's so much love in my heart for you. And so thank you. We like to end the podcast with what we're calling our 5 collective questions. So we're asking each of our guests these 5 questions, and it's just rapid. And so first thing that comes to your mind, and we'll start with Jyothi, and we'll just do one question at a time. We'll go to Jyothi and then Manoj, and then we'll just do each one. Does that work for you?
It sounds like improv.
Improv, you got it, baby.
That's it.
Okay, so Jyothi, first question. There's a quote from Cornel West, and it says, "Justice is what love looks like in public and what tenderness feels like in private." What does this quote say to you?
Okay, so justice, in the public, whatever feels like, it may not be the same. It may not be the same. What feels like in the public and what feels like here in private, that may not match. But ultimately, what feels right over here, I would say, is more superior.
The heart.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. How about you, Manoj? If Cornel West says justice is what love looks like in public and what tenderness feels like in private, what does this quote say to you?
Yeah, I love Brother Cornel West. I've heard him quite a few times. So to me, the justice is more humanistic, the desire for equality, and the tenderness is the bhakti, the devotion within the heart. So I concur with Jyothi. It's ultimately the heart that matters. because the outer comes from the inner.
Beautiful. Thank you. Jyothi, when you think about the practices that you do or say to yourself when challenges arise that remind you how to show up, what comes to mind?
I think of my teacher and his teachings mainly.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Manoj?
I derive the strength from his teachings, you know.
Beautiful.
To me, I have to, I'm big into VQ, visual intelligence. So I look at a Murti of Ganesh. I have a few Ganeshas, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And it's not me looking at a Murti, the Murti looks at you. That's called Katakshan. You get a little hit. So during tough times, I get a little hit. But even during not so tough times, happy or neutral or tough times, I think we should have that steadfastness, try to get that equipoise by getting that hit.
Ah, that's amazing. Thank you. Jyothi, who inspires you the most and why?
I would have to say it's my teacher again, my spiritual teacher, Swami Tattvadananji, because his teachings are very unique and it makes the most sense. So whenever I find myself in a situation, I think of what Swamiji would do in such a situation. And that would be the right thing to do for me, So it's mainly the teachings, coming from the scriptures.
Yeah.
I rely upon that.
That's amazing. Thank you. Manoj, how about you? Who inspires you most and why?
Well, I get a hit when I hear Jyothi.
Yeah. I had a feeling you might say that.
In person or in Zoom, there's an energy of transmission, and it's very clear,
Yes.
because she lives the teachings. So in the yoga world, there's so many people I meet, teachers I hang out with. I actually try to not hang out with too many for dinners and stuff, because I find many of them are what's called pretend anandas. Right? So they all pretend to have that yogic look, that otherworldly look, but they live a different life. So how do you practice your teachings when nobody is watching? Is a real thing.
Powerful.
So
yes.
I see Jyothi, and that's it. She's it for me.
Well, this is a good segue to question number 4. Jyothi, if you could eat dinner and engage in dialogue with anyone, past or present, who would it be?
Shankaracharya?
Ooh. The master himself?
Well, one of the the reason I'm struggling is because when I eat, it's a meditation for me. I do an eating meditation, so I don't speak.
That is true.
So that's why I'm thinking, if I were to speak, then I can't be eating.
That might be a little uncomfortable. You can meditate with Shankaracharya.
So who do you want to meditate with? Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
So yeah, I suppose if I want to have a conversation, which would be Brahman manifest. If Brahman, which is the self of all, if that Brahman can manifest somehow, it would be with that person.
Wow, powerful. How about you, Manoj? If you could eat dinner and engage in dialogue with anyone, past or present, who would it be?
Well, I love polymaths, people who know about everything. And it's fascinating hearing from them. So Benjamin Franklin is an example. Many people in today's times past, but people who are not locked into a niche, because the world has to be viewed in whole. There's no physics, chemistry, spirituality. Everything is integrated. So the polymaths interest me a lot.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you. Last and final question, Jyothi. What are you most grateful for today?
Oh, for the teachings of Vedanta. Without any doubt, clearly. I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but I'm so glad I did.
For me, it's the fact that Jyoti's fever doesn't exist. To me, it's all day by day,
Yeah.
And if the fever comes or whatever comes, we deal with it. We just say what to do. It's a famous Indian wobble and move on. Yeah. So we persevere. It's for all of us. There's a lot of challenges, but what you and Jessica are doing, Christina, is to promote a very positive message, but it's realistic. It's not just bypassing. It's not spiritual bypassing. And it's also the ripple effect really interests me, because that can mushroom into something that unifies us as all.
Yes. Well, thank you, the two of you. You have been an amazing ripple effect for all of us. And this, I just really appreciate the two of you kicking off this podcast.
Well, thank you for having us,
Blessed day.
Christina.
You're welcome.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Grateful.
Thank you.
We'll
Jai
keep you
Ganesh.
posted on when it's published and produced. And so we'll give you all of that kind of information so that you'll have it. We can share it with everybody who loves you.
Love it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jai Ganesh.
Jai Ganesh. Have a wonderful day.